Alright, everybody, welcome back to yet again another 2023 review, and today we have the St. Louis Blues. The Blues are quite an interesting team, if we're being honest, mainly because they had quite a roller coaster of a season when you really look at it. They finished with a 37, 38, and 7 record for 81 points, which adds up to a .494 win percentage. They scored 263 goals and let in 301 for a minus 38 difference. They were 18, 17, and 6 at home and 19, 21, and 1 on the road. So, there is a lot to talk about here with St. Louis, and I'm going to go through their month-by-month schedule right away here because it really kind of helps out just their overall just roller coaster of a year. So, they started off the year 3-5-0. They went 3-0 to start off the season. Actually, I think they were one of the last teams to be undefeated there for a while. Then they lost 7 straight. And that carried over into November, of course, where they went 8-6-0. So despite losing 7 straight, they would win 8 straight right afterwards. So it was really weird. They were kind of a really streaky team for the first start of that season. And then they kind of just went downhill a little bit, went uphill, went downhill. It was really a roller coaster. December, they were 6-6-3. So a 500 month there out of them. January, they were 6-8-0, so it was pretty clear around that point that they were probably going to be a team that would miss the playoffs, and they started looking at what they were going to do moving in towards the trade deadline. They went 3-4-2 in February, so another mediocre month there, and then after the deadline, March really took a turn for the St. Louis Blues. They started playing really well. They went 9-5-1. Especially like when you look at their roster really, they lost a lot of players to the trade deadline. It wasn't looked at to be that good of a roster, but they really proved us wrong with the guys that they brought in and the way that they played. And honestly, in that month of March, it really made me kind of think that they probably will be a playoff team next year. Then in the month of April, they were 2-4-1. So despite it being a roller coaster of a season, I still thought overall that, towards the end of that season, it really brought up some promising moments and some promise for the future if you're the St. Louis Blues, they're 100%. You look at their leading goal scorers. You start off with Jordan Kyrou, who Kyrou actually had a really rough start to the season, but then he really picked it up towards the end. 79 games played, 37 goals, 36 assists, 73 points. There was that big worry at the beginning of the year, and I made a video on it. I'll put it on screen right now. I talked about how St. Louis looked really worrisome, and they were like the worst team in the league at one point. Kyrou was one of those factors. He didn't play well through those first couple of games. I think I made that before they won 8 straight. But anyways, there was a lot of talk there with St. Louis, and the Kyrou contract, was it a bust? Definitely not. You just needed to wait for the guy to heat up. And we may see that happen next year where he has a kind of a rough start to the season. Second in scoring is Pavel Buchnevich with 63 games played, 26 goals, 41 assists for 67 points. Buchnevich, really solid forward overall, had a really solid season. I'd also like to point out the amount of injuries this team had. Out of their 10 scorers, you had 2 that played a full 82-game season. And those 2 players are the only the only players as well that literally played over 80 games. So goes to show that, throughout this season, they faced a lot of injuries. Luke Schenn was one of the 3 players that played a full 82-game season with 82 games played, 21 goals, 44 assists for 65 points. Schenn, I thought, had a solid season there towards the end, and a lot of these players did overall. Robert Thomas, 73 games played, 18 goals, 47 assists, 65 points. And it goes to show that the Blues have the young talent. They have the young players to make something happen here, to put something together. But as well as that, too, you got to look at it as, there is that chance that if they are fully healthy next year, they could be a team that pushes for the playoffs. And when we get into their draft capital, they have the advantage there as well. So this is a team that it kind of does have a bright future, even though they finished below the playoffs this year. Justin Falk was up next there. There were rumors of him being traded. I doubt those rumors reignite. They might, but I doubt it. 82 games played, 11 goals, 39 assists for 50 points. Falk, I thought, had a really solid season on the blue line. It was understandable why there were trade talks, but nothing really amounted of those, of course. Brandon Saad was up next, 71 games played, 19 goals, 18 assists, 37 points. Saad, of course, I thought was a really solid player down the stretch. Was obviously a great player all around, but just had his moments. But he is older, of course. So that is going to play a role in why he's not very good, or he hasn't been the best he's been. Torrey Krug, 63 games played, 7 goals, 25 assists, 32 points. And when I made that video on St. Louis in earlier in the season, or basically at the start, I talked about how it was worrisome because, guys like Krug and those defensemen, they didn't have they didn't have good plus minus. And they weren't the best, defensively. Krug was one of those problems that was very concerning. And I think that, this year, of course, was a bad year all around, but I do think that, if Krug can improve next year, they'll be a much better team. And I think he will improve next year. There's no way he has a bad season like he did this year next season. I just can't see it. Colton Parayko up next there, 79 games played, 4 goals, 23 assists, 27 points. Parayko, there were also talks of him being traded, but I doubt those rumors actually might reignite. I think those ones are the most realistic. They could look at moving Parayko. It's a possibility. Nick Leddy was 9th in scoring, 78 games played, 2 goals, 21 assists, 23 points. And then Sammy Blais. When you look at the other teams that I talked about so far, no deadline player has made it into the top 10 that they acquired at the deadline. They got Blais at the deadline. And he was on a heater towards the end of the year. 31 games played, 9 goals, 11 assists, 20 points. They made out really good in that trade if you're looking at it. We thought that they were not going to do good in that deal, the Tarasenko trade, but they actually made out really well in that move. You look at goaltending, and Jordan Binnington, look, he had his moments this year. I still think he is an alright goalie, but I still do think on some level he is a crybaby. Not going to deny that whatsoever. Binnington, 61 games played, 27, 27, and 6, a 3.31 goals against average, and a .894 save percentage. Overall, I thought Binnington, had kind of just a 500 year. There was those drama with Fleury and, all that stuff, tripping players, interfering with players, mouthing onto benches. There's so much stuff we could talk about. This guy obviously has his moments a lot. No surprise. Thomas Greiss, 21 games played, a 7-10-0 record, a 3.64 goals against average, and a .896 save percentage. I don't think that experiment worked out very well. I pretty much do think he's probably going to leave in this offseason. And finally, we'll look at trades, and they actually made out pretty well in most of these trades. Klim Kostin to Edmonton. That was a move that was like a 1-for-1 deal, but it was worth mentioning because Kostin went to Edmonton and he played unreal. Ryan O'Reilly to Toronto. Now, that deal actually could look out very good for them because they got a first-round pick out of that. They got some solid players out of that as well. And O'Reilly was just absolutely terrible this year with St. Louis. I forgot to mention that. O'Reilly was not good whatsoever. And he had very bad moments this year. But he came back in Toronto, played really well. And there is that possibility. I do want to mention this. There is that possibility that come free agency, he returns to St. Louis. I think they will circle back around and try and get O'Reilly back. And it would be a good idea, in my opinion. Vladimir Tarasenko to the Rangers. I don't know if I could see a Tarasenko return. It's possible, but I doubt it. And then they also made out really good on that trade, too, getting Tarasenko out of there. So they did a really good job this year's deadline. And then, of course, they moved Ivan Barbashev over to the Vegas Golden Knights for Zach Dean. Kind of just a 1-for-1 deal there. So, you can forget about everything that happened in the regular season in this past season. Let's look at the future now. So you look at their draft capital. As I mentioned, this is to their advantage. They have a lot of picks. They have the 10th overall pick, which is their own. So that's going to be a good draft pick there. They get a solid top 10 player in a deep draft. And as well as that, too, they have 2 other first-round picks in Toronto's pick, I believe, and the Rangers pick, or the Stars pick. I can't really remember. I believe it is the Stars one. But still, 2 first. Not bad. And if you want to move those for an impactful player, it's an option. You have 2 thirds, 2 thirds there as well. No second this year. They have 1/4, 1/5, 1/4, 1/4, 1/5, 1/6, and 1/7. So they do have some other draft capital there late in the draft, but they do have a lot of draft picks that they can move or make picks as well to really help out that prospect pool. And they already have some young future here in St. Louis. So when you look at the hindsight of things, this team probably has a pretty good future ahead of them. As it goes for free agency, now thankfully, cap space wise, they do not have a lot, 981,000, but they don't have a lot of people coming off the market either, which is a good thing. They have Josh Leivo, Rem Pitlick, I believe, and Thomas Greiss as well are 3 players there that are leaving. So, yeah, that's it. RFA, you have Josh Brown, and then you have Alex Toropchenko. I would imagine they bring Kravchenko back, Brown, maybe, maybe not. I'm not sure. But yeah, they do, as it goes for like big name players, you don't have a lot of players that are leaving in this year's free agency. And then the last thing we'll talk about here is the future of this team. The only one that I could think of is like Zach Dean and Laferriere. Those are the only two that I could really think of as being bright prospect players. But I do think in this year's draft they will select players to help out with that bright future. And overall, I do think this team is in a good spot moving forward. But anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you all very much for watching. For all of your supporters, I really do appreciate it. Next one will be the Vancouver Canucks. So anyways, thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Adios.